Okay, I think we are now live. I always give it a few seconds because it tends to cut off the first 5 or so seconds when you do this.
Okay.
Hello. Welcome to Hello.
Hello.
So for everyone at home, it is episode 3 of the Men's Voices Ireland podcast, and this time we are talking about The Red Pill. So The Red Pill is a new film by director Cassie Jaye, a documentary which is set for a worldwide release 2 days from now on March 7th, 2017. In the film, Cassie Jaye, who is a self-described feminist filmmaker interested in social issues, meets with prominent members of the men's rights activist community, based mostly in North America, in the USA and Canada, to discuss their work. Over the course of the film, Jaye finds that her own mainly feminist perspective on the men's movement is being challenged by actually meeting with these people and discussing their issues. And the film basically catalogs her journey into the rabbit hole of the men's movement. So before we get started, please remember to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, like the video, share it around. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, which currently doesn't exist, but which will soon, be sure to share that around as well. We have a Facebook page at Men's Voices and a Twitter now at Men's Voices IRL. And be sure to check out our actual website, mensvoicesireland.com. So hello, David and Sarah.
Hi.
Hello, Jaye.
Hello. So I should probably clarify why we're talking about a film that hasn't come out yet. Just really quickly to make it sure that you know we haven't pirated or anything. I was a backer for this film, a Kickstarter backer back in early 2016 when the film ran out of money essentially and had to turn to crowdfunding in order to get made. So because I donated a certain amount of money, I was able to get the film a little bit early and then we were able to watch it. And yeah, so there's going to be spoilers, I imagine. We're going to talk about how we feel about it. And maybe we can start with you, David. What did you think of the movie?
Yeah, I thought it was a very powerful film. I was quite surprised in a number of ways. It was comprehensive. I mean, she did talk to a great many people, and she did do quite a bit of filming, but she blended in the contributions from different people in a very telling way. I thought that it was made in an almost understated way. You know, the volume was turned down quite a bit, but the impact was all the more powerful for that. I felt that the points that were made were made themselves, and there was no need to play them up or to turn up the volume in order to make those points. I really felt it was very, very strong, and I've actually replayed it a couple of times, or at least parts of it anyway, to myself, just to convince myself that you know, my first feelings about it were right.
Very good. And Sarah, well, a woman's perspective on The Red Pill.
Well, my female perspective would be that I was already in her, you know, in the obviously in the men's rights camp before I watched it, so it was being viewed by a very strongly opinioned convert already. So I was along with her. I can't say I was astounded by anything, because, you know, she was making points I've been making just for the last year, like but some of the figures and facts and things, like Hillary Clinton speechless when asked about what should women be thinking about signing up for the draft into the army as well, and, you know, things like that. Like, seeing a lot of very high profile people on the feminist side and academics on the feminist side having very weak arguments, and that just, you know, it's really astounding to think of all the money that goes into, you know, women's rights protection and women's advocacy, and it's kind of founded on a castle made of sand, if you could say that. I don't know if that's the right turn of phrase, but you know what I mean. It's like the emperor's new clothes. You pull away the illusion that we've obviously cottoned onto, and there's nothing there. There's just an awful lot of hate. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that Cassie, the producer or the director, she chose well in the scenes that she chose of the women's rights activists protesting at the men's rights conferences and stuff. But holy mother, the hate that was coming out of those people, they were practically steaming. Like,
I know.
Oh my God. Yuck.
Yeah. It was, I thought one thing I was very happy about was that when she got people in the sort of feminist camp to actually talk, she actually got, pretty respected academics. I don't think respected by the community, not certainly not by me, but
respected and well revered and published and well paid, I'm sure, absolutely. And teaching lots of students, and
she didn't juxtapose them in what I would call a kind of a Michael Moore way, a sneaky way. She kind of segued into saying, here's the feminist take on this. And actually, I think she showed them asking the question and then them responding. So there was no way they could claim that they'd been taken out of context.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
And she let them hang themselves. I mean, at one point, it went from talking to guys in, working with men who've been victims of domestic violence. And it went to, I can't remember what her name is, but she was, a professor at a university. And it's like, what is domestic violence is the question. She's like, oh, well, it's boys and men beating on girls. And she's going on and on and on. And there's no way to say that she's been spun out of context. She's just deliberately saying that it's an exclusively, male on female issue, even when it has been sort of just discussed for quite some time, actual real life, male victims who haven't got anywhere to go. So.
And the figures they had, the American figures they had for number, wasn't it coming, did it come from, she used an abbreviation that began with an F, 3 letters. I don't know, but I took that it was some state, national policing reporting or something. But the figures were like, I don't know, there was, almost 55% were women victims, 45% were men victims that were reported in that stretch that we saw the table across the screen.
That was the Center for Disease Control, CDC. I think
was it? Yeah. No, there was nothing to do with disease. It was about
CDC would collect it though. They would really? Collect it. Yeah, and in fact, they would actually be the broadest definition of intimate partner violence as well, because of the way they collect the statistics. So even with the CDC's kind of liberal definition, you're still getting, very near parity in the numbers.
Yeah, I said anyway. What was it? Four women. Sorry. How does it go again? 3 to 4 was the ratio, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
In a lifetime, 1 in 3 versus 1 in 4.
In a lifetime, yeah.
Yeah, that's the lifetime risk of being a victim of intimate partner violence. And, even if you want to argue, people will argue, oh, it's not 50-50, it's this or that. There's still almost no services for the male victims.
No, there was like one in the whole US, one shelter. And then that woman, the English lady who set up the first domestic violence shelter.
Erin Pizzi,
Yeah, what is her name again?
Erin Pizzi.
Erin Pizzi, yeah. And she was saying how there's, men are absolutely forbidden to come near any of the places in the UK, and that she herself isn't even allowed near the place anymore.
She had a horrible time of it. Her story is very sad, actually, because she was given quite serious death threats and they killed her pets and stuff like that.
Jeez, for standing up for men's rights.
For a number of things.
Challenging the feminist narrative, I think.
Yeah, she had a men's shelter, and she also had men working in the women's shelter, trustworthy, kind men. That all changed when she was kind of kicked out, and it became if you're over 12 and you're male, you're not allowed in.
Yeah.
So that's right. That's right, James. I mean, she pinpointed that point that boys over 12, I think, were refused entry into the shelter. It was astonishing. The hatred that was came out of it was absolutely astounding.
Yeah, but it seems to be like, I mean, the word that I was left with after watching the whole thing was hatred, and what the line that stuck with me the most was, I'm sorry I didn't write people's names down now when I was watching it. I should have done. But the girl, the honey badger, MRA, with the short hair that was interviewed in the
Karen
bar.
Strong.
Karen Strong.
Yeah, she's a very prominent honey badger activist. She's great.
Yeah, she seems so chilled out and, equanimous, as opposed to the hatred-filled feminists we saw.
I recommend her channel, by the way, just to anyone listening. Her YouTube channel is absolutely great, and she is very articulate and good at kind of making points like she does in the film.
Yeah.
She was talking about Boko Haram in the film, wasn't she? The sort of terrorist group. Yeah. That's a good one. I want to spoil that, actually, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, don't. You do or you don't?
I don't want to.
Okay.
Because basically it actually had quite an impact on the person I watched it with when we first watched it. Because it's so stunning. Like, you see, basically it's with the attitude towards how they treat boys versus girls and how, how people react to it differently depending on the gender. And she kind of explores the sort of double standard in that. So I won't spoil that.
No, yeah.
But it does raise the issue which is becoming increasingly important today, and that is the issue of the news. How the news is spun. She's talking about the way facts are being spun these days. And some very relevant facts are omitted, as you were suggesting there about the Boko Haram attacks on boys. But it's astonishing. I mean, the media is one of the few institutions left in our society which hasn't been investigated in any detail. I mean, we've had an investigation into major institutions in society. The church has been investigated, has come out of it terribly badly. Politics, corruption in politics, the financial system has been investigated and is shown to have been corrupt as well. The media is the one big institution which hasn't been investigated, but you don't expect the media to investigate itself.
Absolutely not.
And I think this is a huge area which needs to be looked at very, very closely now, is the way news is spun and the way news is reported.
Yeah.
Indeed. It's very important to bear in mind that the reason this film was crowdfunded rather than being funded by the kind of organizations that the director originally looked for funding from is because they wanted editorial control. So they wanted this film to be sort of a hit piece on the men's movement. They wanted it to be, how can we make these people look as bad as possible and make ourselves look as good as possible? She was not willing to do that. She wanted to make her own film and her own journey. And to do that, she had to get funding from the general public rather than studio backing. So I think she deserves a lot of praise for that, because this film is getting her a hell of a lot of flack. There's a lot of abuse being directed her way. She's being accused of being a propagandist for hate groups just for making this film. So if for some reason Cassie Jaye is actually listening, well done.
Yeah, well,
seriously, I kudos to you for having the guts to go ahead and just make the film that you wanted to make and not be sort of influenced.
Absolutely.
By these vested interests.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's just it's comical that the amount of times that the hate idea is put forward as being what the men's rights movement is full of. But it's just all coming from the other side, and like nobody what is their point? It's so empty. It's so just noisy and empty, because like people are shouting about haters, and obviously they're the ones doing the hating, and it's like they won't even stop and listen. Like they just want to shout over everybody else. It's like it's just so counterproductive, because like there's so much hate already in the world these days, and like I don't know. Anyway, that's another day's conversation.
That was something that my girlfriend actually said when we were watching it. There was sort of a, why can't you have both? Why does it have to be that you're not allowed to talk at all about men's issues?
Yeah.
It's not like they're coming along and trying to stop people from campaigning about, I don't know, whatever feminist issue you care to name, whether it's, pay parity or stopping child bride marriages in the Middle East. those issues are still being campaigned for. We're not trying to stop that from happening. But Mike Tillerman, if that's his name, he made an astonishing statement where he said to the director, even if they were right about the domestic violence statistics, so he basically said that, you know, the parity numbers are all wrong. So he doesn't believe in that. But he said, even if it was true, they're not interested in helping men. They just want to close down women's refuges.
That was Michael Kimmel, James.
Kimmel, that's his name.
What?
Sorry.
Who wants to close down women's refuges?
He said that we're not in, like, us. Okay, he means the people in North America, but, you know, the equivalent of us. We're not looking to have more male refuges or help men. We just want to close the women's ones.
Why?
That's the point. Like, that's what he said.
It was an astonishingly weak statement. I thought he came out of it astonishingly badly.
He did.
I watched that a couple of times, and Kimmel is a professor of sociology in New York University, and he has set up the Center for Masculinity Studies in New York.
Gloria Steinem sponsoring it.
And
Jane Fonda.
The lineup was unbelievable. Gloria Steinem, Patricia Arquette, Jane Fonda, you know, and this woman who wrote the vagina monologue.
Oh yeah.
Jesus Christ! I mean, it was. I mean, this is supposed
comical,
to be a Center for Masculinity Studies. It was sickening to listen to it. But Kimmel came out of it. She set him up actually. She managed to get himself, you know, to condemn himself. It was such a poor performance by Kimmel, who's supposed to be a high-ranking academic, who's written books on sociology, who's written books and a great deal of books about men and about masculinities and domestic violence. But he came out of it astonishingly badly, and he was clutching at straws there. You spoke about a moment ago. You know, he said the men's rights movement are not looking for shelters for men. They're looking to close down women's shelters. This is a complete lie. You know,
it's absurd. Yeah. One of the things I will say is that the reason that this film initially got made was because the director wanted to make a film about rape culture. And she came across Paul Elam's work. And I don't know if any of you are sort of regular consumers of Paul Elam's work, but basically he's very good at what's the name? Modest proposal style satire, where he will take something that someone is saying and just kind of gender swap it and show how horrible it reads. So he basically would react to like sort of hashtags like kill all men. And he'd make an article doing the same thing, but just replacing men with women, for example. And then people get outraged and there'd be articles about how he's promoting violence against women or whatever. But all he's doing is showing that when you do the same thing for men, no one really cares about it. So she was interested because she'd heard that he was, a hate propagandist and, the sort of misogynist in chief of the movement. And so she actually just went and met with him and filmed it and talked to him about it, and then kind of realized, he's not a terrible person. He's just making a point. And that's how the film kind of morphed from being a sort of, let's meet these crazy men's rights activists to, these guys have a bit of a point. So it's actually a very personal journey for her personally. And I thought the scenes where she films her own kind of on the road video monologues were very powerful, because you can see her struggling with her own viewpoint over the course of the film.
Can I come back there for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, on Kimmel. Because, Kimmel was brought over to Ireland back in 2000 or 2001 when there was a debate going on about domestic violence in this country.
Okay.
And he was the principal advisor at the time. And I remember he had a couple of opinion articles in the Irish Times, and it was, he was spinning the same message, as he's still doing today. But this is how powerful the people who dictate these things are. They were able to choose somebody like Kimmel, who is obviously utterly partial, and bring him over here as a self-styled expert and on domestic violence, and to give advice to the Irish government.
That's true.
Maybe there was a shortage of male experts, and they thought they were being effective by choosing
Yes.
one and not leaving men out of the equation.
Yes,
Maybe.
he has that kind of similar to certain groups in this country have it sewn up
Yeah.
in such a way that they appear to be advocating for men, but they're actually just basically advocating for feminism. Anyone who thinks those two things are the same, one and the same, I've got bad news for you, I'm afraid. I really do.
And another thing as well, that the point that was made about the domestic violence was that I couldn't remember, there was a massive proportion, it was like 85% or 90% of it is, they use the word consensual, which confused me a bit, but it's mutual. Like it's,
Yeah, that's the word.
People are both absolutely tempers gone at each other. And it just happens to be the man who physically manifests the loss of control and extreme frustration first, and he's the one that gets it becomes all about him. Like, remember there was one of, I can't remember people's names, but the guy that featured a lot that talked about his young son who his partner had kind of cheated him into having, and who was then, there was big custody problems for a long time, and it really had him in ill health. And he was saying that he reported once that partner, or once or maybe other occasions, he reported that female partner to the police for being violent against him, and they told him, if ever in self-defense you so much as break one of her fingernails, you're going down. Like,
well, wasn't it, if she punches you and breaks a nail, you're going in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's the sort of Duluth model / victim matrix in the US, which is for people who don't know, it's kind of like Guess Who. You know, in Guess Who, you say, is he this tall? Does he have this hair color? You don't say the name. So what they do is they, rather than say arrest the man, they say, is the person physically taller? Could they do more damage potentially, etc.? So it basically was designed to say, you know, arrest men if there's a dispute, but don't say men. Just say
the more physical
characteristics that would almost always apply to men. So that's the way they do it, and that's what they're going to do here with the new guidelines, I would say, coming out of the Department of Justice and Equality at the moment, in recognition of the Istanbul Convention. But anyway, we're getting a little bit sidetracked. I would like to sort of maybe bring the discussion to the area of showing this to people who don't know anything about what we do and how they react to it. So I know that some people who are already watching it, who I've sent it on to, are kind of a bit surprised at what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And sort of didn't really know a lot of the information that was being presented about men's issues, things like suicide, domestic violence, especially family law, and what can go on in the court system. So it's a very good film, I would say, to anyone listening who's not familiar. If you're not familiar with what's going on, or you want to show it to somebody who doesn't really get it, it's a very good film for that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and again, going back again to the domestic violence figures, I just remember them now. The figures were 1 in 3 women over a lifetime and 1 in 4 men over a lifetime. That's in the US, would experience domestic violence.
Yeah.
And it's high, but this comes from the CDC figures in the US. So yeah, I thought that it did bring out those salient facts about the incidence of domestic violence, the incidence of suicide, and family law, and of course the whole lot of paternity fraud that's going on in the US as well, where this guy who said that it was actually, you cannot have a DNA test, because if you do have a DNA test without the mother's consent, over the paternity of a,
this is in France, right?
Child, you could be guilty of a criminal offense in the US. It's it's unbelievable.
I didn't understand that because they were saying in France it's DNA as in does not something, like I didn't understand. Do not ask. But yeah, I mean, how, like, So what you if somebody were to like steal a hair off their alleged child's head to get it tested for it to see if it was really their biological child, they're committing a crime. Is that right?
That was the insinuation, yes.
That's the situation.
So yeah. Doesn't it mean that if the man wants to undergo a DNA test to see if his DNA is the same as that of the disputed child? Yeah, and I mean, in most and he's not allowed to do it unless the mother agrees. It's quite extraordinary. I mean, justice. The whole concept of justice is just thrown out the window here, you know. And I keep going back to this principle that one of the aims of the radical feminist movement is to subvert the principle that you are innocent until proven guilty. This is
absolutely. It's a bigger problem in North America than anywhere else, particularly in Canada. But yes, it is sort of one of the aims, because the justice system isn't giving the sort of answer they want. So therefore, there's a problem with the justice system, and it needs to be dismantled or decolonized, or whatever word you want to use. And one of the kind of core principles that underlies that is that you need to throw away due process, and you need to throw away innocent until proven guilty, because that will discourage victims from coming forward to get justice. It's obscene.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
One of the things as well that I wanted to point out is this film is a very good rebuttal to something I hear all the time, so much so that it sort of made me just roll my eyes whenever I hear it. And it's that when people say to me that I'm just, worrying about people on the internet, or a bunch of loudmouth idiots on the internet, and real life feminists, they're actually fighting for equality, and they're actually really caring about men's issues and so on. This film is a very good rebuttal of that, because what you see is that the people who are actually advocating for the men's issues have essentially no money, no clout, no real influence, and the media hates them. And the other side of the argument is extremely well heeled. They have high positions in the media, they have high positions in academia, and they can basically get away with talking whatever bullshit they want. Unscathed.
Because they are the half of the population that is the victim.
Yeah, so, or the male allies.
Oh no, well. I mean, they can, it's the easiest argument in the world. If all women are oppressed, then obviously society's going to want to support liberating them. So I don't know, to try and convince people that maybe there was no oppression to begin with. There just was consensual role differences that maybe got mixed up. I liked what I heard from that Erin Prizzy woman who said in the 60s, it was people were protesting against capitalism, and then it crept in that somehow that got changed into against patriarchy. Everything bad was the patriarchy, and capitalism, anti-capitalist movement disappeared almost. It was taken, the anti-capitalist people became feminists instead. And it's like, what lured them away? Because they wanted to make some money or something? Do you know what I mean? Like, they went from being anti-money to being anti-men. And men were the people who were trying to earn the money to support their wives and children, maybe in the first place. And what was it? Was it that women were never acknowledged in the powerful position that they had as mothers and homemakers and children, or maybe they were, but it wasn't public enough, or it wasn't, I don't know. I think it's money. I think it's all about money. Like, isn't it a woman's right to make money that the feminists are most pissed about?
Well, Pizzy does accuse them of basically needing a good issue to latch onto, and she accuses them of milking violence industry, as it were. She has some very, very heavy charges against them that she feels strongly about, and I don't know how true or not true it is. I mean, I'm sure you could make similar arguments about charities. That
what?
A lot of controversy has come out recently about and people who are just in it for the money.
Mm.
If you look at the
I don't
Central
mean the
Media Clinic and rehab,
organizations. I don't mean the organizations like
you mean the people
the advocacy. I mean the fact that anti-capitalist was the resistance of the 60s or whatever, according to her, and then it became that just fell aside because feminism and women's lib became the thing. And so the people who wanted to protest about something were no longer protesting about capitalism, they were protesting about feminism. And that's taken off and run along now for the last 50 years. And what's it all about? Is it, I think it could be the money illusion that's got everybody mixed up, because women were powerful in their homes and in their neighborhoods and in their churches and in their schools, just because it wasn't financial power. But everybody's so preoccupied with financial power.
Well, that's kind of what Warren Farrell's book famously did, the Myth of Male Power, which is referenced in the film. And it basically debunks the idea that this sort of breadwinner role is powerful, per se, because if you are the breadwinner or whatever, you do have power in one sense, where you have, access to money and some status, but you lose an awful lot of self-affirmation power, free time power. You're more likely to die young, you're more likely to die of stress-related illnesses, and so on and so on. And it's a very good book. It's a very kind of seminal work that a lot of people who get involved in the men's movement would cite as having read it for sort of an awakening. That's something we didn't mention, what actually the meaning is of the red pill, because that was something that was confusing to one or two of the people I sent it to, or not sent it to, asked to watch it with me.
Yeah, it was to me as well, until they reminded me about the Matrix, and then I was like,
so people who don't know, in the Matrix, when the main character is being told that the whole world is a lie, he's given the option to essentially take a red pill, and if he does, then he will learn the true extent of how the world is a lie. So people use that saying as a sort of a kind of tongue-in-cheek, I think, but it's kind of a meme to describe what it's like when you sort of realize that the sort of feminist paradigm and worldview that's kind of sold in the media is actually essentially I'm not going to say a lie, but it is a misrepresentation of reality that's being portrayed as an absolute truth. And people who recognize this and who see that there are men's issues that need dealing with, they're red pilled, so to speak. And that's what the director is doing. She's basically getting red pilled while making her movie.
That point that you made a moment ago about the feminist movement started off by being anti-capitalist. This was in the 1960s.
Yes.
And as Erin Pizzi said then, suddenly it decided to change the emphasis. The enemy was no longer capitalism. It was now patriarchy. And this is something I'd like to know more about, because I assumed as well that the feminist movement started off by being allied to Marxism.
That is what she kind of says, though.
But it changed emphasis, and the Marxism gave way to I don't know what you'd call it, a kind of a neo-Marxism in which the proletariat was now replaced by women, I presume, and the capitalist class was replaced by the patriarchy.
Well, that is radical feminism.
That's what radical feminism
is. Radical feminism in a nutshell. A lot of people use the term radical in the same way that you might refer to a terrorist, like, the ones who are screaming kill all men, they're just the radicals. No, that's not what it means. It means the root. And in the radical feminist theory, the root cause of problem is patriarchy. So it's men as a group are the source of all the evil in the world. And it's the same as the bourgeoisie exploiting the proletariat in Marxism and Marxist theory. It's exactly the same. It's just swapping the labels around.
But it does raise the question, the radical feminism has allied itself to other movements like multiculturalism.
That's intersectional feminism.
That's intersectional. Yes. Yeah, but there are huge differences. He's also already allied itself in a sense to Marxism, but there are huge differences in that, as we've just said, radical feminism switched emphasis from capitalism to patriarchy, and it doesn't seem to me that this difference has been brought out in differences between the movements, that one side starts to criticize the other, because left-wing movements are always noted for this tendency to gang up on each other if there's the slightest deviation from the ideology. They're famous for cracking down on each other and saying, "Oh, you've switched sides. You're traitors. You've given up the pure ideology." So this is something, of course, that it would be worth knowing more about. But really, I mean, it's so huge that I mean, we don't really have time to read about it, to explore it. There's so many other things to be done.
Absolutely. So, well, the kind of area you're talking about there of the sort of movement cannibalizing itself, that is still happening today. I mean, when you look at what happened recently to Emma Watson, who was the famous UN feminist ambassador, he for she campaigner, and then she's getting turned on because she does a kind of raunchy photo shoot for Vanity Fair where she kind of is almost topless, and she gets turned on for that. Because, you can't do what you want to do as a woman if it's something we don't want you to do. And there's a lot of sort of purity testing.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to hear about a few feminist icons of the past 30, 40 years have now been outed as enemies of the feminist movement. I think Meryl Streep may be one.
Really?
She wouldn't call herself a feminist, that's why.
Would she not? But she's always very, I hear very noisy clips of her shouting about women's equal pay. Blah, blah.
Yeah,
but she's not a feminist.
She was shown in the Red Pill, actually, at one point.
Yeah. So
look up her promotion of the film Suffragette from a couple of years ago, and she specifically said that she would prefer to be called a humanist.
Oh, cool.
If anything, and she got a lot of flack for it. So I think she's, whatever you want to say about her being a prominent activist for women's issues, because she definitely is, she is also a little bit more tuned in to what the label actually implies, and I think that's why she wouldn't take it on for herself, because she doesn't want to be associated with the kind of stuff we're talking about, to be honest with you.
Good.
But there's another one, another famous feminist icon, Susan Brownmiller, who is now in her 80s,
Yes.
And she wrote a famous book back in the 1970s. It was about rape. And
that was against our will, was it?
I forget now the exact title of it. Yeah, but it set the headline for that topic for a long, long time in feminist circles.
But it's about power.
Yeah, but in the last couple of years, I mean, she had been outed as well as an enemy of the feminist movement because she said some things about women. You should take precautions when you go out at night. Like, you should take basic precautions. Like you shouldn't get yourself slosh drunk and then wander around in
short skirts.
Yeah,
and I can see what you mean. Yeah.
And she got hammered for it. In the New York Times. I think it was in the New York Times. Anyway, she got hammered for saying these things. Which is just basic common sense.
Well, one thing that's worth pointing out is that there is still a difference between capital F feminists and the average kind of foot soldier. I really do think that most people, just think, oh, right, equality, sure, that's me. And they don't really either know or care about the antics of Andrea Dworkin or Mary Daly or Catherine McKinnon or any of these people. They just care about the superficial label. And that's why there's so many people are sort of on board with whatever the feminist camp is saying, even if they don't pay attention to what the academics are actually saying in their papers and in their press releases and in their activism. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's quite extraordinary how the extreme element of feminism has taken control of the women's movements in practically every country in the world, and they control it, and they decide the agenda. They they get the money, and they decide the agenda and the narrative and where it's going, and they claim to speak on behalf of all women, but they don't. In my view, they don't
No.
speak on behalf of all.
They do, but then it's almost an assumption that every woman is a feminist. Like,
Yeah.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
if you stand up, if you say as a woman, if a female says she's not a feminist, you kind of have to duck if you say something like that. Take cover, because it's not gonna bring you positive attention in general from women to say I'm not a feminist. Do you know what I mean?
No. That's why this film is good to show to women as well, because it actually shows people like the Honey Badgers, who are prominent. Their channel on YouTube is, I believe, the biggest podcast on men's issues, and it's mostly female.
Great.
So, like, anyone who has this perception that it's just a bunch of men who are whatever angry because they can't get laid or whatever, you have to explain the Honey Badgers, and they can't really do that. They usually say something like, "Oh, they just want to impress men." Karen Strawn, who you were quite impressed by, got some absolutely disgusting comments, not just about her, but about her daughter as well, from feminists who don't like her. So the sort of narrative of butter wouldn't melt, feminists just love everyone and peace and kumbaya, if only these nasty men's campaigners would just go away. It's a complete crock, and this film really shows that very well. So that's the film to show to the person in your life who wonders why you're so worried about men's issues and what are you talking about. That's the film. Yeah.
It's the Emperor's New Clothes, or the Red Pill, or there's a few different phrases you could use, isn't there, for that kind of see the world through different eyes. There you go.
Yeah, it's like that film They Live, where you put on the glasses and you can see what the world is really like.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, there was a part that I almost laughed. I had to pause it because I was laughing, because I think it was Warren Farrell, and he's so amicable, he's so avuncular, and he basically says, the main disagreement that the feminist movement and the men's movement have is on the patriarchy. And it's like, so the main disagreement is that, like, one group says that you're responsible for all the problems in the world, and the other group says, well, no. So he almost kind of phrased it as like a small sort of quibble or trivial disagreement, when really it's like the most fundamental, diametrically opposed view I could possibly think of. It is like, it was pretty funny.
But the idea of trying to have justice that's restorative, that gives people a chance to restore the damage they've done to their victim, accidental or chosen victim. How can people restore when they really don't think they did something in the first place? Like, men weren't oppressing anybody.
Yeah.
And so how do we help men make up for that to the feminists if they weren't doing it in the first place?
Well, I will say something controversial to that. The answer is that it's not about that at all. The nature of the ideology is that it can never be fixed. It's like original sin. Gloria Steinem was asked recently enough about how things have gone for women in the past 40 years. And she wasted no time in saying that things have actually gotten worse. They're actually more oppressed today than 30 years ago. An absurd thing to say, but it's not about fixing the issue. It's about perpetuating the ideology and the money pot for as long as possible.
But this could go on forever. But women, I would say, maybe, I don't know, I haven't read any of her books, but I could say women are oppressed by a lot of things that they have as a culture brought upon themselves these days, with competitive beauty, competitive fitness, competitive super mom, competitive extra qualifications. Women are competing against each other and oppressing themselves with the amount of time they spend looking at manufactured beauty and celebrity on, they're absolutely squashing themselves into impossible looks, and
Yeah.
they're making their own lives impossible, and they can't say ever that it's men doing it for them. Men will look at a girl who is healthy and happy before they look at a girl who's painted in 10 tons of makeup. So they can't say the men are doing it. It's the women. Women are competing with each other.
Yeah, that's one of the things that feminism has brought about, is that in supposedly liberating women into the job market and the world, and I mean, it's not supposedly. I mean, it opens up. It has opened up, and that's fine. I mean, jobs for women and so on and so forth. But it has also laid a burden on women that now you have to be not just a superwoman, a super worker, and excel in your job and so on, but you also have to raise a family as well, super mom, and it's so difficult to do both of those things.
Exactly.
You can't have it all. It's a lie.
You can't have it all.
Exactly.
I mean, this is the great fallacy that that's been spouted about for the last 10, 15 years about having it all. You can't have it all. No, nobody has it all. Men don't have it all, and women don't have it all, as many of them are realizing now that they can't have it all, and this is one of the great fallacies of our day. The idea that you can have everything, you can have it all. It's so crazy,
Well, you can have everything if you stop trying to focus on the material stuff. Like in my philosophy class that I've mentioned to you before, in the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the Platonic virtues, and what Plato said were the divine things that should be the essence of life and the purpose of living, and they were like wisdom and justice and courage and temperance, right? But the human goods, the things that people preoccupy with themselves and think are the end in itself, are health, beauty, wealth, and strength. And like, how clearly does that sit in with this? Like, to me, it makes so much sense that they think they have to get all the money to be happy, not that they have to act bravely and kindly and patiently. If we were more concerned with living Platonic virtues as our means and as our end to happiness, rather than trying to get the biggest muscles and the biggest cars and the most feckin' expensive handbags. Do you know what I mean? We've gotten lost on the way. We've gotten the whole money, it's an obsession. I know I said this last time, and I'm probably babbling, but it's all money that's gotten in the way. If people were happy enough to live in their own circumstances without looking down the road at people living fancier lives, or social media bringing them pictures of the holidays they must have, and the expensive things they must have. It's so obvious to me, but it's so obviously not getting through to other people out there who are leaving their children with paid childcare so they can go and make more money to have more cars and more holidays with their kids that they don't know as well as they would have known them if they'd stayed home with them instead. Like, I'm sorry, that's my point of view.
Well, it also might be that they have to work because they need two people working to actually sustain a household, which is also unfortunate, but that's neither here nor there. But
fair enough, but it's never enough. Going back to the never enough, infinite. This is going to go on and on and on, and it's never going to be enough.
I think, well, the point would be that even if tomorrow, like, you could snap your fingers and all of the things that are being pointed to now as metrics of inequality were equal, so equal pay for everyone, equal educational attainment for everyone, and so on, equal political attainment. The point I would make is that these organizations, these feminist groups and so on, and academics, it would not stop. They would say, now we've got to go on to this next oppression which needs to be dealt with. It would never end.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm sorry, I
kind of got incoherent. An end game. No, I understand what you're saying. They're not looking for an end game. In fact, they are, it's about perpetuating it as much as possible. It's the same with organized religion. It's the same with any organization that has a bottom line. They're not looking to be unemployed tomorrow. Whereas I think we are. I think, if tomorrow you could say, oh, we got everything we wanted.
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to go on with my life now and do something else.
Sure.
That's what I'd want to do.
Sure.
I don't want to be doing this for forever.
No.
I certainly don't feel like it will be achieved anytime soon. But if it were, it would be, all right, let's go talk about something else. Let's do some other issues that are important, or be an activist, because it's a somewhat stressful and at times demoralizing thing to do. But anyway, I think we're probably getting across the point quite clearly that this film is a must-see if you're involved in men's issues at all, or if you're partial to feminist theory and so on. Maybe go in, have your views challenged a little bit. See these people who you're reading about on Stellon.com, right in front of you, giving their opinions, and see if you still think they're horrible people. And challenge yourself, I would say. Get people to watch this movie with you if you are an activist or a person interested in these issues and you're finding it hard to articulate. And in particular, if you're a man trying to explain to your girlfriend or wife or women in your life who don't get it, I think it's a perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
No man on his own in a group of women can ever get this stuff across in a way that they would agree. So people should see the film for sure. And it's made by a woman, so there you go.
Yeah, it's great that it's made by a woman for that reason alone.
Yeah.
It's still a great film of its own merits, don't get me wrong, but it really does help that it's a woman who came in identifying as a feminist who made it, because her credentials are pretty beyond reproach. Her previous films are very much progressive social commentary films as well. Mm-hmm. So she's not some, I don't know, like if one of the Honey Badgers made this film, it would not be taken quite so seriously.
Yeah. The fact that we got to see her change her views, the progress.
Yes, exactly. It's very nice. It's a very good personal film as well as a political one.
Right.
So anyone have anything else they'd like to bring up before we wrap up?
No.
No?
Sorry for ranting.
It's all right. I'm sure people will. Maybe we can just make a compilation of rants.
I have strong feelings. Oh yeah, can I say one thing? And you can edit this out if you want. I absolutely don't mind. No. Well, you haven't. I haven't started. I haven't revved up the rant yet, Anna.
All right.
This the girl Karen Strong said. She was talking. Two things she said, one after the other. One was about language and how feminists are huge on checking policy and media and everything for language that could be discouraging to women in any way. Like calling a fireman, calling a firefighter a fireman could put a young girl off the career because she wasn't able to relate to a fireman as a career. And then, but that, everything good is given, everything good that we're surrounded by the term feminism is the cause, is the truth, as she jokingly said, but everything bad is patriarchy, which is the word, is what Latin word for man is in there somewhere or something. And that's okay, that they're so big on language having implications, but nobody has any problem with feminism being the force of good and patriarchy being the force of bad, and boys having to grow up with that, basically.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
They are the bad. They grow up as the villains.
But Sarah, you don't understand. They don't hate men. They just hate patriarchy, and they want to save men from it too. Yeah,
I don't know.
It's a crock. It's a complete crock.
That's just a piece of semantic nonsense, Actually, that Karen Strawn is she's a very smart woman. I don't know if she's ever been to university, but I've seen her debate on YouTube with somebody. I think it was Naomi Wolf, and she can take on anybody.
Oh, she did, and she also was on the Young Turks as well. The left-wing Fox News, where they told her to go make a sandwich because she wouldn't bend the knee to feminism.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Very powerful mind,
She has a very encyclopedic knowledge of the things she talks about, and she has a good way of getting it across. I actually don't think she's been to university, by the way.
Yeah.
Not that it matters, honestly.
No.
But she comes across as though she is far more down to earth as well as being knowledgeable, which is something that the academic feminists could not lay claim to. They actually, especially I'm just going to say it, the woman, I don't remember her name, but she kind of looked like a cult leader.
The woman in the headquarters of the magazine, was it? Yeah.
She had like she had like this like 1,000-yard stare, and I'm sorry, it's just, I have to say it. And
she looked very powerful and influential, though. I mean, she did look stylish, and you kind of would do what she told you, kind of thing,
That was
I would too, but I would also back very slowly towards the door and keep my eyes on her at all times. And I wouldn't drink anything she gave me,
Oh, yeah, that was Spiller. Yeah.
Yeah, not drinking that Kool-Aid.
That was her. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm being a bitch, as they say.
That's all right. Anyway, I'm tired. I'm probably just going to talk nonsense now if you keep going. So
great.
This was the least film sort of cinematography based review ever. We are not movie buffs.
No.
But anyone who hasn't seen The Red Pill, do give it a watch. It comes out on the 7th of March. You can download it from Amazon, iTunes, all those places, and probably buy a DVD as well.
Yeah.
As for us, don't forget to follow us on everything and show us your love and affection as well. Thank you for listening. It's been great, and we'll see you probably in 2 weeks' time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.